Good evening, good morning, no matter where you guys at. Tonight we'll be reading another three stories sent out. Of course, I do have a couple of questions from social media for friends asking, is this something like I received online or did I just wrote this story? So basically, the stories are actually given to me like the gist and a summary, and what I only do is I make sure to rewrite it. Just, I felt how it would be successfully foretold over a quick storytelling. So I do rewrite the stories, but basically, you guys, the main point, the plot, the content of the story is definitely still there. So I always make sure to, copy the the thrill, the horror, the emotions of the person that told me the story, because of course they would be listening. They're more on the social media listening because I upload in our Facebook channel as well. You go check that out in the description box down below. But without further ado, today we'll be talking about different stories all around the Philippines. We have one story from Bantayan, Cebu, another story from the Marawi. You all know Marawi, right? If you're a Filipino, you know that it's the city where there was like a really, really huge war and a lot of Filipinos lost their lives. So that was very sad. We also have another story. This one doesn't really have a specific place, but this is still a Filipino story of like someone in the Philippines have experienced. So sit back and relax. If we still have time, if I would still have time, I'm gonna read some additional stories coming from siquijor and coming from leyte as well. So it's gonna be like three stories plus two stories if we still have time. So sit back, relax, grab your coffee, and let's start with story number one. I call this one the White Lady of Bantayan. The midday sun beat down mercilessly on the small fishing boat. Sweat dripped from my brow as I helped Mang Pedro haul in the nets. Bantayan Island in Cebu was usually a peaceful paradise, but today the air felt thick with an unsettling quiet. The usual chatter of seagulls was missing. It was replaced by an eerie silence. Mang Pedro, a weathered fisherman with a face crusted by years at sea, muttered a prayer under his breath. He said, "Not a good sign," he mumbled. His voice was a bit raspy. I swallowed hard because I felt like this is indeed quite serious. We finished hauling the nets, and the catch, disappointedly, was a bit meager. As we started our journey back, the sky darkened with an unexpected squall. Ominous purple clouds rolled in, blotting out the sun. The wind picked up, whipping the waves into a frenzy. Suddenly, Mang Pedro pointed a shaky finger towards a secluded cove that we were approaching. Tao, he whispered, pointing his shaky fingers in a cove where there was like a shape of a woman wearing white. A jolt of fear shot through me. In the half light, I saw it, a figure shrouded in white. It was standing motionless on the rocky shore, and the closer we got, the more details emerged. She has long, flowing white hair down to the figure's back. Her face remained hidden in the shadows. Legends whispered of the white lady, or a lady that wears white in Bantayan. It is indeed, according to rumors, a vengeful spirit who lured fishermen to their deaths. Panic seized me. I was so scared because it was my first time having an experience that is out of this world. I fumbled for my phone, hoping for a signal, but there was nothing. And the storm raged on. The sea was very angry, very dark, and the tiny boat tossed like a toy in a bathtub. Then the figure started to move. It was gliding towards the water edge. Mang Pedro, ever the devout man, began reciting Hail Marys in a desperate plea. As the white lady stepped into the churning water, her eyes glowing like a unnatural red, locked onto me. Terror gripped me, squeezing the air from my lungs. Just then, a monstrous wave crashed over our boat, tossing us about like rag dolls. When I resurfaced, gasping for air, the storm had subsided, and the white lady was gone. We limped back to shore, battered and shaken, forever marked by our encounter with the ghostly guardian of the cove. That is for our first story, ladies and gentlemen, the White Lady of Bantayan. So basically, they've experienced a white lady near the cove of the shore. It was known to have caused a lot of drownings and a lot of fishermen dying in the sea just before their friends or crewmates died. They will experience or see it themselves, like the White Lady of Bantayan. Thank you so much for our sender. It was really horrifying experience. I mean, I know compared to any other stories out there in the internet, my stories are not really that detailed because it really depends on how they shared it and how much they do share. But I believe it's kind of a bit realistic because knowing it wouldn't really be realistic, like when people say this is a real story and when they tell you the story in a way that it's more like best writer version, like someone like an author writing a novel. It's kind of like unrealistic for me. Like a skeptic in me shows up whenever there's someone trying to share a story that's very detailed. So having stories like this that are just like recounts of experience, that just focus on the experience and not on small details, this felt like really legit. So it's up to you guys what you think, but the person claims it is a real story, a real life experience. It would be very interesting if you guys could say if you ever experienced the same thing in Bantayan Island. I have never been there myself, but I bet it's a very beautiful island. I got a lot of beautiful images here in Google before I started reading the story. So I will surely try to visit there and hopefully will not experience the White Lady of Bantayan Island. Anyway, let's start with story number 2. Story number 2, this came from story from someone in Marawi. So I actually titled the story The Ghost of War, a witness account from Marawi. The stench of burned concrete and dust hung heavy in the air, a constant reminder of the devastation that had unfolded here. 5 years had passed since the Marawi siege, but the scars in the city were as fresh as ever. I, along with 3 of my college friends, Sarah, Ben, and Alex, stood at the edge of what used to be a bustling marketplace. Now all that remained were skeletal structures, gaping wounds in the once vibrant city. We were all from different parts of the Philippines, brought together by our university's disasters relief program. Marawi, once a city teeming with life and laughter, was now a ghost town, a monument to the war's brutality. A heavy silence pressed down on us, broken only by the rustling of wind through the debris. "This place feels," Sarah started, her voice barely a whisper. "Empty," Alex finished, his eyes distant. We all nodded, the weight of the tragedy settling upon our shoulders. A morbid curiosity gnawed at us. We ventured deeper into the ruins, dodging fallen concrete slabs and twisted metal. Our footsteps echoed eerily, a stark contrast to the joyous sounds that once filled the streets. As the afternoon sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced menacingly, a strange feeling started to creep in. It wasn't just the oppressive silence anymore. It was a prickling sensation on the skin, a sense of unseen, like some eyes were watching us. Suddenly, Ben stopped in his tracks, his face pale. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, his voice tight. We all shook our heads because we've never heard anything. But because of that, our hearts were pounding. Then a blood-curdling scream pierced the entire city, like we felt like the silence has been broken. That sound of screaming was so raw and so filled with pain that it sent shivers down our spines. We looked at each other, fear etched on our faces. The scream echoed again, closer this time, followed by the sounds of a desperate struggle. Panic surged through me. What was happening? That was the question I have in mind. We stumbled back, desperately searching for the source of the sound, and we saw figures, shadowy forms flitting through the ruins, and their wails and screams filling the air. But they weren't real. They were phantoms, translucent figures reliving the horrors of the war. Terror paralyzed us. The air grew thick, and a metallic tang filled our senses. We were witnessing a mass hallucination, like reliving the siege through the ghosts of those who perished. The screams intensified, merging into a cacophony of pain and despair. We couldn't take it anymore. We bolted, running blindly through the maze of debris, the chilling screams echoing in our ears. We didn't stop until we were back at the safe haven of our relief camp. Gasping for air, our faces streaked with tears. And that night, we didn't sleep. The horrifying images of the spectral battle, the screams of the innocent, were seared into our minds. It's as if we were there. We left Marawi shortly after, carrying an invisible weight on our shoulders. Back in our respective cities, life went on, but the experience in Marawi clung to us, a constant reminder of the war's brutality and the ghosts it left behind. The image of the ghostly battlefield, a spectral reenactment of the siege, continues to haunt me even now. I still have a lot of nightmares like every now and then. And whenever we get a chance to talk, we somehow cannot share our very own experience, and I bet my friends are also experiencing the same nightmares as I do. It wasn't just a horrifying experience, it was a harsh lesson. Marawi serves as a chilling reminder of the devastating cost of war, a cost that lingers long after the last bullet is fired. The ghosts of Marawi are not just figments of our imagination, I knew that for sure. They are a reflection of the city's pain, a plea for peace, and a promise that the world will never forget. Wow. That's the end of the second story. That gave me goosebumps. You know why? Because I have friends that have experienced what happened in Marawi. And they were still traumatized. And I really do want to ask questions about this because it was like very, very unlikely for them to want to relive the experiences that they've had experienced on that war, and it was really crazy. For you guys who doesn't know what Marawi City is, Marawi City is one of the bustling cities in the Philippines that have experienced a war. Like, it's not that big compared to any other countries, but it was a war that killed a lot of Filipinos and it was very devastating. And this was a true story, sent to me through email. And I was really, really scared to like rewrite the story, but then because it was sent to me in Bisaya language, and I wanted my all of the people that listening to my podcast to understand the story because this one's really something. And I hope Marawi City and the people that lost their lives, the family, you know, rest in peace. And I hope there's more peace in the future because this is not what happened in Marawi is not just a one thing. There was bombing as well last year, 2023, and we've got a couple of cousins there who was saved by the bell because they were not in that specific location that happened to be bombed by rebels, and it was so heart wrenching. And my heart goes to the family that lost a lot of their loved ones in the war and in that bombing in Marawi. And I hope there's no more to come because I don't know, we can't bear it anymore, right? This is very heart wrenching and very sad. My heart goes out to the family of the people that lost their loved ones. I'm sorry. Anyway, let us jump into the third and final story for today. If I still have time, I'm going to add two more stories later, but let's jump into another story I received through email. This doesn't have any specific place that they've mentioned in the story, but I have titled or called this story as Haunted by Her Touch. It's a story of potential incubus or incubi. So, if you don't know that, those are demons that actually get energy from people's lusts. So let's see how this person have experienced something like this, and it's also indeed a claim to be true. So let's all decide together at the end of the three stories which is probably realistic or which is a potential elaborate hoax. It started innocently enough. A reoccurring dream, vivid and detailed, that unfolded like a silent movie in my mind's eye. For a year, she haunted my sleep, a vision of dark, beautiful hair, and a smile that could launch 1,000 ships. There was no dialogue, just shared sensuality, a silent dance that left me breathless when I woke. Oh, it was a wet dream. So he's having a wet dream for a very beautiful woman. There was no dialogue. It's just like they're doing something interesting. At first, it was a welcome escape. Being single in your late 30s comes with its own set of, challenges. These dreams, though fantastical, became a comforting solace. A world where desire found a willing recipient. Then one rainy afternoon, fate or some cruel cosmic joke intervened. I bumped into her. Yes, her, the same woman I was having dreams for years. And a wet dream at that. I met her at a bookstore. There she was, flesh and blood, the dream girl materialized. The same captivating smile, the same cascade of raven hair that seemed to hold its own secrets. And what's even more crazy is that she recognized me too. A whirlwind of romance followed. Dates filled with stolen glances and lingering touches. The tension was electric, a reflection of both the undeniable chemistry and the unsettling familiarity I couldn't quite shake. The night we decided to take things further. A nervous excitement thrummed through me. But as we lay entangled, the dream and reality started to blur. Her smile, once alluring, stretched unnaturally wide, revealing a maw lined with needle-sharp teeth. Her hair, which moments ago flowed sensually, writhed and pulsed with a life of its own. Her tongue, long and barbed, darted out, searching, hungry. Terror choked through my scream. Adrenaline flooded my system as I scrambled away. The bed sheets tangled around her thrashing form. My fight or flight kicked in, propelling me towards the window, and without thinking, I smashed my fist through the glass. The cool night air, a welcome shock. I was barely dressed, but I escaped, bruised and bleeding, but alive. The police found me rambling outside, incoherent with fear. They found her apartment, empty, no trace of the beautiful nightmare I'd encountered. And it's been years since that night, but the memory remains in my mind, a chilling reminder of the seductive dangers that can lurk beneath the surface. I find peace now in the laughter of my nieces and nephews, a love pure and untainted. Dating? Not a chance. The allure of desires pales in comparison to the peace, dreamless sleep. And that smile still haunts me in the quiet moments, a chilling confirmation that sometimes the things we crave the most can be our worst nightmares. Oh my god! Wow, this is my most favorite story for this. Podcast. I mean, wow! It's just wow. It's not too. How do I say this? Too conversationalist type of story. Actually, this was written as is. I did try to add a bit touch to make it more, artistic and poetic. But the part where they started to like do it, I actually removed some of those censored parts. Just leave some, general like words. But basically, what happened is that he was having wet dreams, and then one day he met this girl after years of having wet dreams with her. He's actually in his late 30s, right? And so they started dating, and the day that they did he realized that her smile, the alluring smile, is not really what it seems like. So right now he's just not dating anymore. He loves the peace of having no dream at all, and he still was really haunted by that very beautiful woman with a chilling smile. And he did mention something like he is not dating and he was just enjoying the laughter of his nieces and nephews, which is good for you. You find your true love, and it doesn't really mean that you'll have to had a relationship, It's just like enjoying and loving someone and receiving love. It's not just about gender. You can still feel happy from family and friends, or just with your dogs and pets, right? Very interesting, very interesting. This is one of my favorite story for this episode. I do have two more stories that I wanted to mention. These are very short ones, so I probably would like to read them real quick. But before that, please follow and subscribe. Click the like button down below. So let's jump into the two extra stories for today. Okay, our two more bonus stories starts with story from siquijor and story from leyte. So basically, siquijor is an island very famous for its wonderful beaches and very beautiful sceneries and cave. I've been there actually with my family. It was really amazing. And this story was basically a aswang story. Aswang is one of the mythical creatures here in the Philippines, where they eat flesh, humans, take their bloods. It's like a version of werewolf and vampire, Philippine style. So let's start the story. Extra story. I titled this as The Aswang of Siquijor. It was very hot that night. I ventured deeper into the dense jungle of Siquijor. The locals warned me about the aswang, a mythical creature known for its bloodlust, but fueled by a youthful bravado. I ignored their pleas. I was there for a thrill. A person that likes doing campings and sort. My flashlight sputtered, casting flickering shadows on the ancient trees. Every rustle of leaves sent shivers down my spine. The silence was broken only by the occasional hooting of an owl and the distant cry of unseen animals. It was late at night, and I stumbled through the undergrowth. I tripped over a gnarled root and landed with a thud. Just then, I heard a sickening wet squelch behind me. My heart hammered against my ribs as I slowly turned around. There, in the faint moonlight, stood a figure unlike anything I'd ever seen. It was tall and gaunt, with skin stretched out over its bones. It had a gaping maw filled with needle or razor-like teeth. The air around it reeked of decay and death. Then, terror flooded over my veins. My mind screamed, "Run!" but my legs refused to obey. The creature took a menacing step forward, its glowing red eyes fixed on me. Time seemed to slow down and the seconds stretching into eternity. As the aswang recoiled, hissing like a startled cat. When a cat do this yoga stretching side where you have a unusual C on its back, that's what it's actually looked like. It was hissing, and it melted back into the shadows. The biker gestured for me to follow him. Oh, okay. I wanted to interrupt because it's actually looked like the biker gestured for him to follow him. So there was actually someone that saw everything. That's why the aswang recoiled. Okay. I didn't review the stories, by the way, so I just directly copied and pasted everyone. These two stories from my email. So please bear with me. Without a word, I climbed onto the back of his motorbike, my body trembling with fear and relief. We rode for what felt like hours, and the engine a comforting rumble in the deathly silence. He finally dropped me off at the edge of the town, a stern look on his face. He said, "Never disrespect the old ways, boy," he said before disappearing into the night. Shuddering, I made my way back to my hotel, forever haunted by the chilling encounter with the aswang of Siquijor. This is, by the way, a story from a foreigner visiting Siquijor. Woo! Wow. And that's the end, by the way. So this was like, once you visited Siquijor, you would want to go back. And there's a lot of foreigners here and there visiting Siquijor. So this is kind of like very interesting because possible. They're there for thrill and to know the beauty of Siquijor, and knowing that the locals told him to not go there because of aswangs, he didn't listen. So it's kind of like understandable that he's a foreigner indeed. Really nice story. Thank you so much for your story, Kevin. Let's jump into the last story for today. It's called the Kapre of Leyte. The dense jungle of Leyte seemed to swallow the sunlight whole as it trekked through the thick undergrowth. I was on a solo hike, a foolish decision fueled by a thirst for adventure. Now lost and alone, the warnings about the Kapre echoed in my head. The Kapre, a towering creature said to inhabit the forest, was known for its trickery and love of human flesh. Every snap of a twig and rustle of leaves sent my heart racing. The air grew colder, and the sun's warmth a distant memory. My phone had died hours ago, living, leaving me utterly isolated. Just a despair threatened to engulf me. I stumbled upon a massive balete tree, its gnarled roots forming a natural cave entrance. Exhausted and desperate, I decided to take shelter for the night. The cave was surprisingly dry and offered a sliver of protection from the unseen dangers of the jungle. And as I huddled inside, shivering despite the humid air, a low, guttural groan echoed through the darkness. My blood ran cold. The stories mentioned aswangs and monsters was deep inside my mind. But then something really felt a bit odd. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to ignore the sound, but it came closer, punctuated by the heavy thud of footsteps. Panic reached me. I didn't have a weapon, and I don't have anywhere to run. Then a faint glint, like a light, flickered through the opening. Squinting, I saw a pair of glowing red eyes peering in at me, the size of a dinner plates. They're very big. They belong to a creature far larger than any man. It was a very, very big man. Now I realize it matches the description of what they called the Kapre. Terror threatened to paralyze me, but an instinct for survival kicked in. I scrambled to the back of the cave, desperately searching for an escape route. My trembling fingers brushed against a rough, vine-covered opening. It was as if the balete tree, was giving me a way, an exit, to run for my life. It was barely big enough to crawl through, but it was my only hope. Just as the massive hand of that Kapre filled the opening, I squeezed myself through the narrow passage. Thorns scratched my skin. The roots that are so hard broke, and I didn't even know how I did it. The sound of the creature's frustrated growls echoing behind me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I emerged into another part of the jungle, daylight filtering through the thick canopy. I didn't even know why I was there. I just remembered trying to get out of the big balete tree, and it gave me away. I kind of felt like if encantos are real, I bet they are, because I've experienced that very 7 foot 8 feet human-like creature, but not human at all. And I believe that's what they call the Kapre. I stumbled out into the other part of the jungle. The daylight is already filtering through the thick canopy. My body was battered and bruised, and I was so tired, physically and mentally. But as I looked back at the dense undergrowth where I had cheated death, a newfound respect for the legends, and a healthy dose of fear for the unseen dangers that lurked in the heart of the Visayan jungle. That was a very unimaginable experience for me. And I wish we all respect what's the unseen. Ooh, okay. It's a very, very interesting story you have in there. Seems like 2 mythical creatures were actually explained in the story, the Kapre and the Encanto, because it felt like something helped him get out and emerge into the other part of the jungle, which is very interesting because he said he was just resting in a cove cave-like roots of a big balete tree. Wow. Anyway, this is all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed true to life experiences coming from people that sent me audio and emails and story. If you have any stories to share, please send it through the email down below. If not, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. Toodaloo.